Aloha kako, and welcome to today's webinar on disaster preparedness, focused on how do we help our keiki be more prepared. My name is Janice Ikeda, and I am the CEO of Vibrant Hawaii. I'm honored to host our conversation today. Today's webinar is part of an ongoing collaboration between Vibrant Hawaii and Hawaii County Civil Defense Agency to strengthen community-led readiness. Today, we're focusing on how to prepare our keiki, not just for their safety, but for their sense of security, belonging, and resilience. And so to kick us off, I'd like to first welcome and introduce Hawaii County Civil Defense Agency Administrator, Talmadge Magno. Aloha, Talmadge.
Aloha, Janice. Thank you very much. And thank you everybody else online joining us for this special event. Keiki are as vulnerable as anybody else in our community and unfortunately often forgotten. And so like all the vulnerable populations, we need to make sure that they're considered along with everybody else. Because they're the ones that in the future are going to be taking care of us. And so thank you for providing this opportunity for everybody to collaborate, share their mana'o so that we can get better at taking care of each other. Thanks, Janice.
Yeah, mahalo nui, Talmadge. And so again, welcome to the webinar, and we encourage for each of you as you listen in today, know that we are inviting you to not just think about your own household, your own keiki, but also be considering your kuleana that you have in your neighborhood, your school, your extended ohana. We believe that preparedness is something that we all share, and we can all become active agents in helping others become more prepared. Today, we'll be hearing from 5 panelists and have reserved time at the end of our webinar to answer questions that you might have. Please feel free, as questions pop up, put them in the chat. If for some reason we are unable to get to your questions during the webinar, we're more than happy to follow up after the webinar concludes. So let's go ahead and get
Recording
started.
in progress.
Our first panelist is Dr. Joseph D'Angelo, who is a pediatrician. He has worked extensively with children and families throughout Hawaii. He also serves as a colonel in the U.S. Army Reserve and has deployed overseas as a military field surgeon. His dual experience in medicine and military service offers a unique perspective on what helps children feel safe and prepared in uncertain conditions. Aloha, Dr. D'Angelo.
Hi.
Can you start us off by helping us to understand how children experience emergencies differently from adults, and what emotional and developmental needs we should consider when preparing them for disasters?
Certainly. So I have a set of slides here. And let's see. So why do we treat children differently? These are several devil's advocate questions. Should not the entire group of victims be treated the same? Are not all victims faced with the same external forces of nature? Are children not just small versions of adults and maybe even more manageable because they're smaller? Do they not have their parents to take care of them? Are they not more resilient than adults? So basically, they're not little adults. This talk is abbreviated, so there was a couple of slides in between this to demonstrate some of the differences, but in the interest of time, we're going to be more concise this time around. Oh, I forgot to start my timer. Let's see. So these are the fundamental differences between adults and children. Obviously, it's their size. I think anyone who's worked with children knows that the psychology is different. And also related to that, but not solely that, is development. And then dependence. They're dependent on adults or older folks. And of course, their vulnerability, including to victimization. So this, I always like to demonstrate this, especially the top slide, because it shows the relative proportions of the head size in children. And of course, something that's larger is a bigger target. So the head, of course, is more vulnerable in physical trauma. So their size makes them more vulnerable to toxic exposure, biological, chemical. There's a greater force applied per unit area of the body, so blunt force trauma is greater. The relative head size, as I noted, makes for a bigger target. And let's see if I can move this. More motion upon the neck, and of course, their developmental um, uh, vulnerabilities. They actually have a lower absolute volume of blood and smaller fluid reserves, so blood loss and dehydration results in a more rapid adverse outcomes than adults. And their bones are smaller, more pliable, not fully formed, thus more easy to break. And sorry, I keep trying to get rid of the pictures of us. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Um, Not fully formed, and their ribs are they can damage spleen, liver, lungs. And then, of course, there's variations in medication, equipment, supplies, including for decontamination. So the development, they have a limited comprehension of risk and even their own state of being and needs. They have a limited ability to recognize injury or illnesses, limited ability to communicate to caregivers, first responders, and medical providers. And as you know, a lot of times they're trained to not talk to strangers. And in a situation like this, having the judgment of being able to communicate with the right stranger is important. They fight and resist care, as we all know, taking our toddlers to the doctors. They continually changing development so that all ages are different and all on a bell-shaped curve. So individuals are different. And then you add the special needs children into the mix, and that complicates further. And then they have different needs. You know, babies need formula, toddlers need safe food, those in growth spurts need more food. Um, and let's see. Let's see, why is it not advancing? There we go. So this is woven in with their dependence on adults and the developmental dependency. They have limited comprehension. Their cognition is often based on past experiences and very concrete. Uh, it also is incident dependent, what type it is, what level exposure there is, how close to adults they are, how others around them are affected. If they see adults panicking, then of course that's going to affect them quite a bit. And then differing long-term effects and need for ongoing counseling is important. And we talked about the dependency from complete dependency, such as the infant, which diminishes with time, but still gradually. I mean, even kids up until 18 are still very dependent on their parents, and these later generations even more so older. So the caveat to that is keeping families together. They're also vulnerable to victimization. These forms of abuse you see here, a little bit beyond the scope of this talk today, but something to always consider when it comes to security. So this is just a summary of these differences, their size, their dependency, their past experiences, head injury and physical vulnerabilities, more vulnerable to respiratory infection and disease, which can occur after things like floods, more vulnerable to hypothermia, again, floods, any kind of cold weather environment, disruption of their social setting, and or orphan children are at risk of exploitation. So in the interest of time, I'm only going to go over the four that I highlighted here. Well, three of them, and then one aspect of another. These are the type of extra protection that kids require. So in terms of their vulnerability to physical harm, they require these, reiterate some of what I said earlier, small circulating blood volume, relatively skin thin, less body fat. They're more vulnerable to injuries, and they have greater toxin exposure. And again, we talked about respiratory infections, wounds, skeletal injuries, and then a lot of people have limited experience with taking care of children. So the sooner you can get them into like pediatric or advanced emergency care, the better. These things can be frightening, obviously, and they can be intimidated by the medical care itself. Chronic stress can occur during separation, and of course PTSD, depression, anxiety follows. Higher rates of long-lasting anxiety exist and affective disorders, and those who develop highest in those who develop PTSD. Um, Family separation is important, and I always harp on this in terms of planning because many times during a sudden disaster, kids can be at school and thus separated from their families. And so it's important to understand the separation. You can read along here. I'm not going to read these slides, but except for the bottom, the principle should be to not lose track of children, even if they become separated from their families. And that I think is an area where planning on our part is important, accountability of children. And then, of course, there's abuses in displaced environments. I brought this up because Maurice actually said this was present during the sheltering experiences that he had during the volcano. And so security and observation and community are all important to help prevent these abuses. And then, Janice, I believe you had another question, which was what this slide was created for.
What is one health-related item or routine that you recommend all families with young children include in their emergency preparedness?
Well, I put two on here, but they're still short. First of all, talking about it and having a plan, and then having a physical emergency kit. And then my emphasis is always on knowing what to do when families are separated. Talk to them about when you're in school, what you're going to do. You're going to pay attention to the teachers, if or who's safe to talk to. Uh, but and I think the more you plan it, and ready.gov is really nice because it makes this, as you can see from Pedro the Penguin here, it kind of makes it fun, game-like, so they can actually enjoy what they're doing to maybe be ingrained in them by the time they actually need it. And kids tend to remember stuff quite well. Cindy at the Tsunami Museum tells the anecdote of children who learned in their classrooms the tsunami preparedness. Actually were able to save in Japan, were actually save some of their older adults in Kapuna because of what they had literally just learned. So planning, and then the hands-on stuff, the kit is important because it brings a tangible reality to this. Hey, we might need this flashlight. Hey, we might need this what do you call it, extra food or whatever. So, and then you had one more question. Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I had him at it. Oh yeah, the key lesson. Um, so in all of my travels, in all of my deployments, and everything I've done, this is probably, I say this probably every month at Army Reserve Drill, that communication failures are the root of all failures. And I have this little picture here of this little girl I just read about last night on the interwebs and confirmed that it was a true story. Karina Chitkova. She was a little 4-year-old who was lost in the Siberian woods because the mother thought she was at the father's house and the fathers thought she was at the mother's house. And so uh, this illustrates that communication is always key. There are things I already mentioned, like having a plan with your family, and then also more sophisticated things like me just getting trained up on ham radio, thanks to many of our other resilience personnel. And like I said, ready.gov has games to help with communication. And then for the older kids, training courses. They actually, we don't just consider them part of the victim populace, but older kids, especially teenagers and young adults, can be a part of the first civilian responders before anyone else can get there. So preparation and planning is a close second to communication in terms of preventing failures. And that's really the key. That's my coming up on 10 minutes. So if there's any questions, I do have other slides that might address them, but there you go.
Mahalo nui, Dr. D'Angelo. Really appreciate you putting this presentation together for us,
You're welcome.
reminding us that
Thank you.
preparedness for our keiki is as much emotional as it is logistical and physical. Our next speaker brings a school-based perspective, helping us think through how to reinforce preparedness in daily environments that children trust. Kim Pierce is the executive director of Kalamapi'i Play School in Hilo and founder of the Root to Rise Counseling Center. She is a marriage and family therapist working with kids and families in East Hawaii for the last 20 years. Kim supports young children and their caregivers in developing readiness habits that are playful, empowering, and developmentally appropriate. Kim, aloha, thank you for joining us. Building
Aloha,
on
Jana.
what Dr. D'Angelo shared, how can families prepare preschool age children for emergencies in ways that feel safe and not scary? And what kind of language, routines, or activities help young children understand preparedness?
Yeah, wonderful. Dr. D'Angelo touched on a few really great points. So to add on that is it's important to remember that children are incredible learners. Children learn more before the age of 5 than any other time in their life. And we have the opportunity to recognize that when not under distress, the way kids will encode, this is true for adults, the way kids will encode information will make it readily available. And so when we're having these conversations with children, it is essential for them to be normalized conversations. This has to be a talk with auntie and uncle or an older sibling in the house or mom and dad. Like, it's really critical for like the nervous system down regulation so a kid can encode these critical facts about their life. And so when that environment has been established, things like, shout out to the folks at Halau Lamaku at Iniloa, you know, the kids making the bracelets with the mom or dad's cell phone number on them, just like they learn their colors, or if they're learning a second language, do they know the address? Do they know a phone number beyond just mom or dad? Little ones are memorizing things all the time. So just with that same way, have them memorize the emergency related information that they need. Phone numbers being one, address being another, names of safe caregivers who've been identified. Also one that you can add to for critical folks, and this is more Dr. D'Angelo's zone, but any medications, if that was something that was really critical for a child, they could know the names of their own medication. So things like that becomes a part of the conversation. So they're prepared without even realizing that they're prepared.
Mahalo. After a disaster, children may experience fear, confusion, or separation anxiety. What's one way caregivers or teachers can help young children process their emotions and feel safe again in the days and weeks that follow?
Yeah, that's such a good one. And like so many parents know, every kid is different. Every kid in your house is different. But the two guidelines that I use as a parent and as a provider are as follows. The first is just like they tell you on the airplane, the parent's mask goes on first. The reason that's true is because the nervous system of your child, especially the younger they are, is attached to yours. Even though they're not in your belly anymore, their nervous system absolutely catches how yours is. So the way mom and dad are responding to the event is going to be the baseline for how the kids do. So it's so critical. I've seen this with really acute incidents like, dog attacks or accidental shootings or even more large scale things. But parents knowing of how they're going to manage will set the bar for kids. So that's the first guideline. Mom, dad, whoever the guardian is, puts their mask on first and then puts it on the kid. Because if you're losing it, that is very concerning for the child. The second thing is, just like all kids are different, trust your child's process. When you have gotten yourself the oxygen mask and can see what your child needs, this is why I love doing my work. Kids will show you the way. They will show you the way they want to go. They are naturally inclined to process. We did not come on this earth to hold PTSD. We came on this earth and experienced trauma, and our natural human movement is towards recovery. Trust that, parents, and look for that. Support it. Sometimes, depending on the event, there's shock for many days and a kid is not ready to talk about it. Some kids can't do anything but talk about it. And so just as you do in your parenting, and you parent a little different for each kid because of the uniqueness of who they are, the same would be true in the recovery post-trauma.
Mahalo, Kim. And you were one of the folks that just got certified in psychological first aid. And when we were chatting about that kind of training and preparedness, I had shared with you an experience that completely caught me off guard. that I'd like to share with folks here. And it was a lockdown at my daughter's school. And we got a text message saying the kids are in lockdown. And a few hours later, we got a text message saying lockdown is lifted and everything's good. So I went on my day completely not thinking anything until the next morning when my daughter was getting ready for school. And she said, I want to take my iPad to school. And I start telling her, your battery's going to die. I don't want to hear you grumbling about it later on when you can't get on your iPad. And then I paused and I said, why do you want to take your iPad anyway? And she said, in case I need to call someone for help. And it broke my heart to realize that I completely overlooked what that experience in school, how it affected her. And it made me wonder how many other parents, their kids came home that night, had a hard time concentrating and doing schoolwork, maybe had no appetite. There might have been some kids that reverted to bedwetting, and we just had no idea of what they had experienced because maybe it was just a drill or, it was all good because we got the text saying it was all good. Is there anything that you can share with us as parents of how to remember how to enter into that world of a child so that we can be more responsive to what they're actually experiencing?
Yes, if first you give yourself credit because you didn't miss it. You didn't miss it. You caught it. You could have missed it, but you're saying, wait, why the iPad now anyway? And then you caught it. And then you realized, and then it began that opening. And now it's a conversation and a safe space between the two of you. That's the thing. Nothing will override that relationship component. So you did catch it. And you're right. I'm not a DOE employee, but if I had my druthers, what I would say is three things should happen. First, kids are really concrete. The younger the kid, the more concrete. So using the term active shooter drill is terrifying for young children, I'd say under third grade. I think it's terrifying for anyone, but the younger, they're very concrete. So this is not an abstract idea. Like a drill is very scary. It's very difficult for them to differentiate like an older child would. Okay, so having said that, I think we could stagger DOE correspondence that's age appropriate and give parents of young ones, that's much more my zone, more of a heads up. Here's what our plan is. Here's what your kid is going to hear. Here's what the drill will look like. Okay. That way the relationship and the safety between parent and kid can be used to help facilitate the kid being ready for the drill. Right. Then we have the drill. We should be having the drill. Okay. After the drill, the two things that I think would be huge is allow the children to talk about it. Give them the extended lunch period that day. The rest of the day is recess. We saw that on college campuses after shootings. We see where in a big quad area, everyone comes together. That's the natural tendency that folks want to do, provide that for children. And then three, on the way home, the DOE should have some kind of language. They may have some of this. I'm not saying that they don't. About what to expect, Janice, like some of the things that you suggested for young ones, regression behavior, toileting changes, sleeping changes. That would be very common. It's normal, and we can move through it. It will resolve, but give parents a heads up because, if I'm a parent and I'm an accountant, this is not what I know. So to help some folks with a little more info, but the DOE is on it for a lot of reasons. I always think they should bring like an animal, like they bring to the airports. Can they bring an animal on and let the kids pet the dog or something like that? I don't know. Those are just some thoughts I have.
Oh, mahalo nui, Kim. I really appreciate you joining us today. It was really, really meaningful, valuable to hear not only how schools, but how families can also become these touch points to just help our kiddos along. I'd like to shift us now and consider what happens when a response requires real-time action, and our next speaker brings us into that critical moment. Battalion Chief Stacy Domingo is with the Hawaii Fire Department and brings hands-on experience responding to emergencies affecting children and families. As both a responder and a parent, she offers insight into what real-time response looks like and how preparation saves lives. Chief Domingo, aloha. Thank you for joining us. From a responder's point of view, what should families have in place before a disaster strikes? And what have you seen that makes a difference in how children and families navigate emergency situations?
Good morning. Thank you, Janice. For us in our family, I've been in the fire department for about 21 years, and my husband has been in the police department for 22. So we've had a lot of emergency response from our family, whether it's just that my husband and I are getting called out for these emergency responses, or it's kind of the dinner talk at home. What we've found is that preparation is key. And I think that the title of being a responder, that's going to be, if we keep that in our mindset, because with that becomes a bunch of preparation and pre-planning and conversations. Those things are going to be the things that make a difference with whether your children are in a position where they're reacting or they're responding. What we've tried to do is really have a lot of conversations about the work that we do, so that when we say we're going out for a response for a specific type of incident, we've already had conversations about what our role will be. A lot of times when we hear about big disasters, we think that the responders are right in the thick of it. They're like at the eye of the storm. But sometimes, even as responders, we are helping other responders. And I think that giving the context of what our responsibilities and our roles are in that response, that is going to be helpful to the children. I also feel like maybe having more common talks and plans before the actual disaster hits. You know, it's just like, I mean, I grew up in California, so we had a lot of earthquake drills. And when we did have the earthquake, we were able to respond with that practice, as opposed to reacting of just being like, oh my gosh, what do I do? What do I do? It's like, because it was ingrained in us, and it was just a practice skill set that we had. So I do think that that would be also the one of the big things, is to constantly have conversations about it in non-stressful settings. Develop a plan to be responders for your whole family, even the children, and not reactors.
Mahalo. And I know you have successfully raised and launched several teens now entering into adulthood. And, you know, Kim, and to a degree, even Dr. D'Angelo was really focusing on younger age children. And I'm curious if you could provide some of your experiences on helping teens be actively engaged within the family dynamics of helping the household be more prepared. And so, can you share what's one way that families can engage teenagers in readiness, such as assigning responsibilities or even learning basic first aid? And what are some of the things you and your husband have done?
Well, for us, my children didn't have a choice. But one of the things we did was we included them. I think we value our teenagers and our young adults and our family as being support to the responders. So instead of just saying, okay, you're the kids, we've got to manage our children before we go out, we're saying, hey, this is where I could really help. I use your help, and if you could step up. We like to empower the kids and give them responsibilities. And I found that using the statement, this is what I really need from you, it gives them a sense of responsibility to the entire response. And then they feel like they're part of it. The other thing that we have is we've had our kids trained with hands-only CPR. That's important to us, to just feel, to give them that confidence to be able to handle something that happens at our house. You know, that we did fire extinguisher training at our house. We were just talking about, you know, pull, aim, squeeze, spray. It was just, we were just talking about that the other day. So I think just empowering your children with knowledge and giving them skill sets to be able to have a response, again, to respond rather than to react. And the other thing is just really good communication. We are constantly checking in with them, letting them know updates to our day and our workflow. in the state of an emergency, so that they can also be calm about where we're at, and they don't have to worry about us. They can just worry about being at home and getting the chores done.
Awesome. My final question, as someone who oversees fire EMS dispatch center, what should children or teens know about calling 911? And are there any tips for how families can practice this in a way that feels empowering and not frightening?
Oh, this is a really good question. So all of our dispatchers and call takers are trained to extract information from the caller, as opposed to just get the information that they share. So we have a series of questions that we will ask the callers. Having children know their phone numbers, their address, or being able to describe their location, that is key. So if it's something where you want them to be prepared to call 911 from home, if it's even just having a fluorescent piece of paper on the refrigerator that says, this is your phone number, this is your address, and these are the directions, or, maybe it's in between these two roads, or just some kind of context. When we take the call, we're going to ask you your phone number, and then we're going to ask you to repeat it. When we ask for your address, we're going to ask for your address, and we're going to ask you to repeat it. And then we're going to just guide the conversation with questions. So if they can understand that when they call and they ask for help, to just let us ask the questions and answer the questions to the best of their ability, we are going to get help started. And it's going to speed the process. Even though it seems like it's lengthening the process, it's actually going to speed the process if they allow us to ask the questions.
I love that. Thank you. Mahalo nui. Chief Domingo, thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your personal and your professional experiences. I'd like to transition now to explore how families can build practical preparedness skills together, skills that come from time-tested youth leadership programs. And I'd like to welcome Noi Saiki from the Boy Scouts of America Aloha Council. Noi plays a leadership role in supporting programs that equip youth across Hawaii, Cub Scouts, Scouts BSA, and venturing with practical skills like first aid, emergency preparedness, navigation, and community service. The Aloha Council serves as the largest scouting region in the U.S., covering not only Hawaii, but also Pacific territories like Guam and American Samoa. Aloha Noi.
Hi, aloha mai.
In the Boy Scouts program, youth learn practical emergency skills like first aid, building a shelter, and reading a map. Could you share one specific skill or exercise from scouting that any family, whether they're involved in scouts or not, can practice at home to build their child's confidence and readiness in a disaster?
I want to say first, thank you for inviting me to this conversation, because what we do, what we've always done, is just this: prepare our kids for anything and everything that comes their way, to help them navigate their lives, and making the best choices they can. So let's see, we have a lot of skills, as you know, to choose from, and just one would be really difficult to talk about. But I want to briefly talk about a few things, and then just give one overarching thing that is really important to our program and to me personally. We have the 6 essentials that we for outdoor activities, and this is like based on the little ones, Cub Scouts, that they should pack a little bag whenever they're going out, hiking with the group or away from mom and dad into the yard for a bit on their own. They should include stuff like a water bottle, sun protection, basic things, trail food, a little bit of food, a little first aid kit, even if it's 2 Band-Aids and Neosporin. It's something that they can use and feel good about taking care about themselves when they do go on their own or with a group. Another thing is the orientation navigation stuff. And there's all kinds of ways of doing that. You can find it online and lots of scouting forums, and in addition to all kinds of other outdoor people. Well, what's important is that it allows you to be able to know where you are, wherever. If it's, oh, I wonder where mom is. Okay, where is mom? Let's make a way to her. Know where you are and know where you're going to, and how to get there. So that's another thing that is really important for kids to understand, especially young ones, as they start growing up and navigating further away from the home. Finally, what do I do when I'm lost kind of thing. And it's more of an emotional, psychological protection. You want to use the stop method. You want to be able to say to myself, stop and stay calm. Think about where I am. Observe my surroundings. Where am I? What's happening? And plan. Make a plan as to where I'm going, how I'm going to get out of this situation. But it allows the kids to just to not panic and sit and wait. It allows them to start working out the problem of, I think I may be lost. Let's think about it. So it calms them down. Like it was mentioned earlier that the nervous system needs to calm down, and that's really important for little ones, adults too, because when you get panicking, and then it takes you off in a different situation. But all of these things are really important. But the overarching thing, I think, is what we practice, what we promise to do daily as scouts, is to serve others. When we reinforce the idea of helping others, serving others, taking care of kupuna, taking care of somebody else other than yourself, when we instill these little things in the kids from little, they grow and they learn and they understand that this isn't hard. I can do this, and gosh, it makes me feel good. It gives growth to both the giver and the receiver. So it's a win-win situation. It also creates bonds and relationship, teaching them that you can reach out to another person and receive goodness coming back. Not all the time, but there's that they can learn and try to practice. I just want to say about that is that at any age, kids and children and teenagers, adults, we all benefit from this service. It builds confidence in kids. It builds empathy, and especially community awareness.
Mm-hmm.
In a disaster, in an emergency, it's really important to have community mindset, because it's hard to do it on your own. You need to depend on others. You need to feel good about depending on others. You need to be able to reach out and not feel like scared about it. I wanted to share a little story. As a den leader a long time ago, we had a pack. We had a pack fundraiser. It was a breakfast fundraiser, and we made breakfast plates, and people came and ate. And then after everything was done, we had a bunch left over. I had like 20 plates, and it's like, oh, that's a lot of pancakes to take home. So I thought, this is a learning opportunity. And we had some time. The kids weren't going to get picked up right away. So I said, let's take a little time and head down to downtown Hilo and pass out these plates to the homeless. First thing off, they were like, ooh, that's kind of scary. But you know what? Let's just do it anyway. We got in the car, we took the plates, we went down, and the kids were a little hesitant. The older one stepped up. There was about 10 of us. And I said, come on. And the older ones led the way. The little ones started to follow. Everybody carried one plate and offered it. And it was transformative. It was amazing how the kids were able to be really scared And the moment they receive that reaction of thanks and gratitude from, people just sitting there, they don't know them. Could be an auntie, could be uncle. It was a variety of ages of people. Very scary situation, but they said, okay, I'll follow you. Let's do it. And they did it. And on the way home, they were just thank you. And it was so much fun. Let's do it again. I was like, okay. So these are good seeds to plant to help our children, not only in the good times, but when things get a little hairy and scary for them, to be able to understand that they have a community of people, they have, they can support one another.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So,
mahalo nui.
Yeah,
I love the emphasis on building relationship with community and the awareness of interdependence. And that's so aligned to all of the values of Vibrant Hawaii. And I guess, building on that idea of community service and community service projects that are so much a part of the Scouts program. We know that these projects often involve planning, teamwork, leadership. What's one type of family-based mini preparedness project inspired by Scouts, like a home evacuation drill or community hazard mapping, that parents and caregivers can lead with their kids to reinforce preparedness and community awareness?
There is so much, but let me preface this by saying, when you're planning something for your kids or your family, keep two things in mind: that every purposeful thing, activity can be a game. So we're known for having games with a purpose, because you can do everything, but it can be boring and kids will lose interest and they not engage and retention goes, But once you put fun into the mix, it sticks. They remember it, they remember the details, and they also they're able to teach others. If they're having a lot of fun, they want to share it, so they're going to teach others, and then it'll continue on. So it's not just one person that you're teaching, it's everybody around them. You want to plan the game with a purpose, and you want to keep it simple and make it fun. A lot of the times, our activities get really crazy big, and I think it's more the adult leaders that enjoy it and add and add and add. It can overwhelm the kids, and they do get overwhelmed and they drop out of they pull back from the activity. But simplicity is fabulous. It just cuts out all the fluff. It gets to the root of what you're trying to teach, and then making it fun just uplifts the whole thing. And so when we're planning things and we're trying to make it happen, I think the very first thing I thought of is that you go home first and you figure out what you have in your house. Take the family, figure out, okay, let's do an emergency preparedness checklist. Let's find 5 things in our house that we already have, because I know civil defense gives you a list of things. You can go online and find a list of things here, but families, they have their own unique needs, like pets, or if someone needs medication, older folks that live with you, or babies. You also live in flood zones, or up in the mountains where it's cold, or whatever it may be. The best thing to do is figure out your uniqueness and write your checklist. Okay, so first off, you do 5. You go find matches, find a flashlight, find a tarp, find pet food, and your favorite bear or stuffed animal, something to soothe you. So those 5 things, you have the kids go off and get it. Now, there are different levels that you can do this at, because the teenagers might go, this is boring, let's do something more fun. So you challenge them, you tell them to do it blindfolded, or you know what I mean, you add challenge to that, or you make it a competition for them, and that usually keeps them involved. And they will want to add to the list or add different levels of intensity to make it happy and fun. Yeah. So what I wanted to say about that is that family, when you do it together as a family, it lasts longer. It brings you closer together, and the information is able to be discussed not more than just once. You're not just teaching a class. You're able to hold discussions at dinner time. You're able to talk stories in the car about stuff that you just did. It's really important to take a little time every so often and talk story with your kids so that they can understand how important it is to you and how important it should be to them.
Mahalo nui noi. We really appreciate you making time to join us today and for giving those tips. And I think building off where you're kind of leading us to is what are these activities that we can be doing with our teens? Last year, as part of Vibrant Hawaii, our OAKA, Opio Alliance for Kuleana Advancement, that's our youth program. We say it's for youth by youth. We had several of our young adults actually go through the CERT program and become certified. At the end of their training, they were so inspired to take the core of what they learned in that program and make it a fun and challenging experience for high school students. And so they've taken that curriculum, tailored it, put a lot of fun, engaging activities within this curriculum. It has become our 3-day Youth Resilience Academy. And today they actually launched their second academy for this summer. They're doing a series of 7 around the island. And so I'd like to now transition over to our Vibrant Hawaii Chief Executive Officer, Maurice Messina, who has been working very closely with our young adult facilitators of the Resilience Academy. Mo, can you share with our audience all about the Academy, what it is, what youth who are participating walk away with, and why we're doing this work?
Absolutely. Thank you, Janice, for the introduction. And aloha, and thank you all for joining us here today. So like Janice said, I'm going to talk a little bit about how Vibrant Hawaii is empowering our youth and through them, really our entire island by nurturing resilience, leadership, and community readiness. The Resilience Academies are 3-day workshops they're designed to prepare our youth with the essential skills for navigating all the challenges that they face and fostering community resilience by equipping them with knowledge and confidence to navigate and thrive in the face of various challenges, that we all know that teens go through, from personal and peer distress, but because of where we live, also for natural disasters and medical emergencies. Like Janice said, it's part of our AWACA program, which is a youth-led initiative which we're operating with young leaders, age 15 to 24. They represent all the districts of our island and rooted in rural and native Hawaiian communities. This year, we have academies in Kona at Uluvini, Waimea at Tutu's house, Papaiko at Papaiko Gym, and Hilo at Klimakina Park, Keao and Keao Armory. And we're going to be closing our series this year at Ocean View at the Ocean View Community Center. So we really are throughout the island. And the academies, the focuses include first aid, hands-only CPR, AED training and stroke awareness, emergency planning and situational awareness. For instance, a couple of the facilitators today brought up go bags and preparedness kits. So each youth that leaves our academies will go away with a go bag, which includes first aid kits, compasses, whistles, flashlights, solar and hand crank radios, playing cards, stress balls, hacky sacks. And those are important, especially if a kid has to go to a shelter, they need something, keep themselves busy, keep their mind going. We also teach wilderness survival. And one of our favorites is how to make a meal on a 1-burner stove during the canned food cook-off, which all the kids really enjoy. We also teach active and compassionate listening and disaster readiness, and of course, peer well-being. As part of the academy, we bring in local experts, firefighters, police, civil defense, who lead with practice drills where the kids, the youth, they learn how to support emergency distribution points, how to make household emergency plans, and how to form, these extremely meaningful bonds with our first responders. But we also bring in community and business leaders who talk with the youth about during our daily lunch and learn series about their careers and what it took for them to get where they are in their careers and how the youth in the academies can do the same. So this matters because we're equipping these youth with crucial skills, but just as importantly, we're connecting them with the community, which builds, of course, personal resilience, emotional, physical, social readiness, and collective resilience, which is shared trust, mutual aid, load capacity, which helps our youth become active contributors, transforming, these fears that they may have during natural disasters into knowledge and action. And I'll close with, just stating that these academies, they're more than just workshops. They're really living proof that when our youth are supported, when they're trained and trusted, they flourish, and so do our communities. So thank you and mahalo for listening. And I want to give a special mahalo and shout out to our youth, our first responders, and our partners for helping to light the way in our academies. Aloha.
Mahalo nui mo. And I know that this project was of particular interest for you because prior to coming on board as the COO of Vibrant Hawaii, in your role as Parks Director, I'd heard you shared several times with our network of hubs about your experience in that extended shelter that was put up during the 2018 lava flow and your experience of witnessing some of the young people and youth and kids in the shelter. And so what were some of the things, even if you can just share with folks, we always talk about go bags and they might be wondering like, how do I help my child or my teen start to think about what they would want to have in the go bag? And could you share some of the things that we've put into these go bags as a part of the Resilience Academy?
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Janice. Yes, I was part of the response effort from, the 2018 lava flow. And one of my charges was to help ensure that our shelter in Pahoa, shelters in Pahoa and Keao, were up to snuff and, everything was running fine and everybody got what they needed. And that was going okay. But after a few days, I started to notice that our children, all the children that were in the shelter, all day to what they were seeing, they were just seeing people crying. They were seeing people being sad. They were seeing their families, their neighbors, their new friends that they made in just a few days really struggle. And after a few days, it became apparent that we had to do something to help, ease these minds of these youth, help give them something to do. And because a lot of them, especially the ones who are really relying on electronics right now, they may not have that ability in a shelter situation, or even if they're at home and they're without power for quite a few days. So we started thinking, Janice and I and our academy team put our heads together. And it's like, well, in our go bags, the importance about, flashlights and first aid kits and all that, but also playing cards and Uno cards and hacky sacks and stress balls, coloring books, things to really just do something to help keep their mind off the terrible situations that are going on around them. And also, when the youth bring home their go bag from the youth academy or from the resilience academy, we tell them, hey, don't forget to tell your family that they also need their own go bag. Like for instance, I guarantee my wife and our go bag would have floss in it and toothpaste and AA batteries, which of course would be different, but everybody's thinking about what are these things that I can't do without for a few days. And so the go bags are one of the most important things that we do at the Resilience Academy. Because when disaster strikes and they have to leave, they just run, they grab their bag, and they got enough to keep themselves resilient for at least a few more days.
Mahalo mo.
You're welcome.
I've been, keeping an eye out on our chat to see if there were any questions coming through. It seems like most of the questions have already been answered. And so again, yes, we will be sharing out both any of the resources that our speakers spoke of in the presentation, as well as the video recording of this presentation. We are so fortunate to have the partnership of Naleo TV to be live streaming this webinar and also hosting a recording of the webinar once it is done. And so big shout out and mahalo to Naleo TV, and mahalo for all of you joining us on the live stream. We do have time for one question. If there's anybody that would like to come on camera and ask their question or pop it into the chat. And if not, I will offer our partner in this and see if Talmage is still with us and if he'd like to come back on and close with any final thoughts about today's presentation.
Hi, Janice, I'm still here.
Awesome.
I was listening intently. Everybody had great information. Thank you. Whether you're an expert or you're just a parent, it's very important to share this information to take care of our keiki. And Mo, for your insight as to your experiences with sheltering and during those traumatic experiences that we've had in the county. Those are good insights. So hopefully all this information that we've gotten today will help us in our daily lives as well as during disasters to be able to just be more resilient in our communities. So thank you, everybody.
Yeah, I would echo that. Mahalo nui to every one of our speakers. One quick question that came in through the chat that I saw is, how can people connect with a resource if they or someone in a group in their community would like to learn first aid CPR and get that certification or training? So you can actually email vibranthawaii.org. We have a network of folks that we have supported through our Resilience Training Center who are now instructors in first aid and CPR, and we're happy to connect you with those instructors and get you and your community trained up. I'd like to go ahead and close us out now with a huge mahalo nui to our speakers and to all of you who've joined us today. Preparedness isn't just about having a go kit or knowing your escape route. It is about relationships. It's about knowing how to help be that conduit and support to keep our keiki calm, connected, and cared for in moments of uncertainty. And so before you sign off, please take note. Here's 3 things that you can do today. Start a conversation with your child, your grandchild, your niece, your nephew, your neighbor, using age-appropriate language. Put yourself in their shoes. Remember what it's like. Check your household's emergency plan and include keiki in the process of updating it. And third, be an ally of emergency management. Share what you learned today with one person, a neighbor, a teacher, an ohana member. As a reminder, you can find more resources on our website at vibranthawaii.org/resilience and through the Hawaii County Civil Defense at hawaiicounty.gov. Preparedness is a shared kuleana, and when we lead with aloha, we all stand stronger together. Mahalo nui, everyone. Stay safe and stay connected. Hope to see you next week as our webinar focuses on disaster preparedness for pets and animals. Aloha.